Welcome to another afternoon of Worship and Word. This is Worship and Word Conversations. Man, I'm joined by the man himself, Chris Bartley. Chris, we're back.
Yeah, man. It's not even it hasn't even been 24 hours.
It has
since
not even been 24 hours, man.
To just really digest what we talked about last night. And even between now and then, some interesting revelations, man, and the opportunity to apply it. So
absolutely. Listen, if you have not checked out last night's conversation, we had a conversation on Friday night. We were wrestling with the whole transition from David to Solomon and family and legacy and generational curses. And really we spent a lot of time just reading the scriptures last night and wrestling. Mm-hmm. We had more questions than we had answers. So I want to invite you to go back and listen to that program. If you're watching this on YouTube or watching this on Facebook Live, check out the previous video. It was a really great conversation. Our conversation this evening is about, I know you see the banner, but before we get into all that, I'm going to invite you to check in with us in the comment section. Let us know where you're joining us from, where you're watching from. We always like it when you check in. Our exchange here on Worship and Word is very interactive. If this is your first time hanging out with us, this is not just a conversation between Chris and I. This is a conversation.
That might be one of our unique propositions.
Yeah, that's our USP.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our USP, man. I think so. Yep.
Our conversation is between all of us. So, as your comments come in, as you check in, as you share things in the comment section, we pull those up and pull those on screen and continue the dialogue. That's what makes Worship and Word such an interesting experience. And before we jump in, we want to invite you to check in with us again. Before we jump in, I'm going to ask Chris to give us a recap of last night's conversation. But before we do that, we're going to pause real quick and we're going to pray as we continue. Let's pray together. Lord, we are grateful that you allow us to hang out in this way. There's so many options, God, on the internet. So many things that can capture our attention, so many things that can help to give us life and perspective and even distract us. So for our Worship and Word family and those who are, joining us for the first time, we're grateful that they're choosing to spend the moments that they have engaged in conversation with us and with each other. So we pray that what we share this afternoon and how we challenge each other provides a growth to our spiritual journey. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, Chris, recap us, man. Give us a snapshot of what we talked about last night. As you're doing that, I know our friends are going to check in with us. We know here on Worship and Word that some of you stream this, you cast it to a television, your device is far away, so you don't have the opportunity to readily jump in the comment section. But if you do have that opportunity, we invite you to do that. The more you make noise in the comments, the more Facebook and YouTube actually opens this up to more people. It's funny how that works. So
it's like an honor system.
It is, man. Like, can you be trusted with talking to more people? So.
Right.
So yeah, man, give us a recap. I'm gonna hop on the Worship and Word Facebook side of things. Okay. But I wanna invite you to give us a recap.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we focused last night on the family dynamics of David and Adonijah. And we realized that there was a bit of a pattern being repeated because for those of you that don't realize or you weren't here last night, Adonijah was repeating the same cycle that Absalom was repeating that he committed. Long story short, Absalom took revenge on one of his brothers because of his brother Amnon's offenses. And so he was supposed to be reprimanded heavily by King David, but he was really kind of accepted with open arms. So we talked about this idea of mercy without justice is not really mercy at all. It's enablement. And so that's really what David was doing. He was enabling his son Absalom. So Absalom sets up camp right outside the gate. That should have been also where David could have either appointed judges, as Pierre mentioned last night, or even been there himself, or at least make an appearance. And he didn't do that. So Absalom was, in a sense, bottlenecking the needs of the people at the very front before he even got to David. And he was building a camaraderie, not even camaraderie, loyalty around himself and, kind of propping himself up as, well, if I were king, this is how I would do things. Long story short, Absalom decides to take over the entire kingdom. And even then, David still doesn't do anything. It was David's soldiers that had to go after him as David is running for his life. And then David weeps over Absalom after he dies. So Adonijah is now following in the same footsteps as his brother. It could very well be that his brother saw what Absalom was doing. He's like, yo, my daddy a punk. I don't have to, there's not much to this thing. I think I'm going to go ahead and become king, even though David had already appointed Solomon king.
Mm-hmm.
So this was very interesting, where David approaches Adonijah and says, why are you doing such a thing? So anyway, long story short, the same kind of similar pattern starts to emerge. We didn't get too far, but we got to the point where we stopped and we were talking about how it's how cycles, how these pathologies in our families really happen. Why didn't David learn his lesson from before? What caused him to be just as merciful to Adonijah, knowing what the end, what the outcome was going to be. And in this case, Adonijah actually appointed himself. Like, it wasn't even he got the priest, he got everybody that was needed. So he actually went farther than Absalom did. Yeah, it was official. And so we were kind of just wrestling with why was David so soft? Why didn't he do this? And so we also looked at the relationship between Adonijah and Saul, and how that could have also had some sort of historical meaning for David, as he ran from Saul the same way he ran from Adonijah. Wow. So and I think last night we really were on the negative, not negative, but we were on the side of David that was like the weaker, the placating, why didn't he do this instead of this side of things. And so I think today we're gonna try to be more empathetic, and figure out now, well, let's get the entire scope. It's not all black and white. It's easy for us to say, yo, why did he learn his lesson? But man, why haven't we learned ours, P?
Wow.
So we're gonna go through that today.
Absolutely. So we got friends, family checking in with us. Shannon's checking in with us.
Shannon, what's up?
Good to see you. Pam Horns checking in with us. Denise Portis from Temple of Praise SDA. I think that's Temple of Praise. I think Temple of Praise is in Cleveland. I think that's Pastor Nathaniel Drew. If it is, let us know, man. Pastor Nathaniel Drew, man, he was throwing flames this morning. He was throwing. Oh yeah, he was throwing flames. So.
Hey, yo, send him that link if you want to hop on right quick though.
I was sending the link to see if he wants to hop on with us. But it was a great message that he shared, and I see other people. See, the thing about it, to give you guys an inside scoop, in the platform that we're on right now, we can't see certain things that they show us on Facebook. Right? We're inside of a platform called StreamYard, and we thank you so much, Worship and Word family, for supporting us so that we can be on this platform. We have our subscription paid for a year. It's things that the platform doesn't give us. So I can look on the Facebook app live stream and see that Delia Robin is on watching with us. Now I can't see it here, but I can see it on Facebook and see that Angie is watching with us. And we got Mika Graves checking in with us. Our good friend Carlos.
OG Carlos.
Yeah.
What's up?
El Marie from Barbados checking in, was hanging out with us last night. So we're going to have a really great conversation. This is going to be rich. We might end up with more questions again than we have answers. So we're
that's all right.
And that's okay. Delia Robbins in with us. We just want to shout you out. I saw you on the Facebook side. I don't see you in this platform. So understand, folks, when you're watching live streaming and you see maybe the host or people with two devices, it's usually because the platform they're using doesn't give them additional insight. So Miss Delia, no more hiding. No more. You're not a hider anyway. You're not a hider.
Shout out to Erin. Erin says hello, and also Shane. She says, or he.
No, that's he.
From
Shane.
Loma Linda. Shane.
That's one of my.
From Loma Linda. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I went to school with Shane at Andrews.
Okay.
Like,
that's
Shane's a good dude, man. Like he's just good. He's good people. Good people. So thanks for hanging out with us. So we're wrestling with today grace and mercy to our forefathers. Or for our forefathers in connection with our conversation on last night. And before I get to our official question of the day that I'm going to put up, I want to start with this question. What's something that you wish that your parents had either taught you or talked about?
Mm.
What's something that you wish
Mm.
your parents had taught you, or you wish that you maybe at least had a conversation about it? So some instruction, some inspiration. It doesn't
Good
have to be
question.
necessarily like heavy, like I wish they told me
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
skeleton number 17.
Right.
It could be as simple as, I
Right,
wish,
right.
I'd learned how to check the oil or something like that. So I want to
Yeah,
invite you to
yeah.
hang out in the comments. Let us know what's something you wish your parents or your family had
Hmm.
taught you or talked about. And it can be like something we take for granted that we do every single day, or something a little deeper, before we
Mm.
get to our official question of the day. Chris, I'm gonna throw it at you first, man. What's a thing?
Whoosh.
What,
Man, relationships. Now,
okay.
it's one thing to see it. I'm fortunate to be in a household that has, especially growing up, two parents. So being in a two-parent household, and but yeah, man, it's one thing to see it and experience it, but it's another thing to have that sit down, like
Mm,
like sit down, son. Let me tell you about
yeah.
how this thing works. Yeah. So there's that. I remember, man, I was also in I think it was the fourth grade. And I think one of my friends, he was like in the third,
Yeah.
he used the word condom. And I'm like, I come back home like, Pops, what's a condom? It's like,
You're
you
fourth
know,
grade?
I was fourth grade, but
Yeah.
hey, family dynamic. So my
Yeah, yeah.
man knew, younger than me. I was probably in the fifth, maybe. He knew more about sex than I did, right? But family dynamics, we ain't talking about that. But he was probably exposed to more too. So that's another thing too. So I was just like, yo, what is that? And he's
Yeah.
like, you'll learn. It's
Oh, that
like,
was the answer?
you talk, when you get older, you'll find. I was like, all right.
Your
But
pops is Jamaican, right?
yeah, yeah. So but he's more Americanized.
Okay.
He's not like the heavy accent, old school, get the strap. Like he might I think they hit the switch once or twice. But yeah, man. So that, and you know what I realize now, if my nephew's 4, right? He's not in the
Mm,
fourth grade, but he's young. If he were to ask me that, 5 years from now or 2 years from now, I'd be like,
yeah.
yeah, you'll learn.
I definitely be like, go find your mama, because
Go find your
that's not the
mother.
conversation I'm having with you today.
Right.
Can't be like, Uncle Chris
Yeah.
told me about. Nah. So we got some answers
Oh
coming
man, yeah.
in. Let's see. Siobhan Jakes is plugging in for Delphine Best.
Careers.
So careers, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big one. Some of our conversations
Yeah.
are, just get a job.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know
Mm-hmm.
the ins and outs about even different
Ooh,
careers, man.
that ties into Pamela's,
Yeah.
because it's one
So
thing to just get a job, but financial issues, saving money, buying a house, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
man, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, similar. Shannon talks about
Shannon. Yeah.
finances more, and communication.
Communication.
Aaron says credit. Listen.
Mm.
Can we talk about the credit score?
Can we talk about that? Some people got on Jay-Z. Now you want to talk about credit in one of your latest albums? It was
Right.
444.
Yeah.
Now you all this time. Now you want to drop. Now you want to drop the wisdom.
Yeah.
but yeah, man, and yeah, Aaron, you hit that on the money. No pun intended.
Yeah.
El Marie, how to work through emotional pain. This is not just a cultural thing. We would say like, it's Caribbean parents, and
Yeah.
because my mom's Trini, my dad's Jamaican, but it's not just culture. It's not just an ethnic thing.
Yeah.
I think it's also a generational thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those who are boomers and they don't really, some do. There are exceptions to the rule, but it's you learn by doing and experiencing, not a come here, sit down. It's not like Family Matters. It's not like the Cosby Show.
Right.
It ain't like that. And I think I might have had that dissonance between what you see on TV, especially with Black families, and then how your family really is. We don't have no soft music playing in the background as your daddy and mama say, "Come here, let me tell you about what you did."
Yeah.
It ain't happening like that. So
there's no soft music. I'm gonna let you know my girlfriend's pregnant. And then the from the audience, and then the somber look.
Yeah.
Bruh. It's like pots and pans flying. What are you doing? Yeah.
Or the reverse. My parents were more like okay. We ain't even gonna talk about that. We just
Yeah.
sometimes it's
So,
even worse. But
so that
because you don't know where the
generational
shoe
thing
gonna
is
drop.
big, and that
Yeah, absolutely.
emotional pain, that's something we see stretching across not just generations, but like you said, cultures. It's work how to work through emotional pain, and that's one of the things that we're going to bring up in our actual question of the day. So, Worship and Word family, you're setting us up real nicely for this.
Delia says, I wish my parents told me what they really meant when they said, wait till you grow up and have your own, mercy, have your own children.
Listen. Okay. So I know parents were popping off in the comments last night. I think I think Mika has some stuff to share about this. I think Pam has some stuff to share about this. And I think Delia was talking about, this aspect last night too, where sometimes I'll talk to my mom about just things like parenting life, about kind of different things. And my mom laughs. She just laughs. I was like, Mom, do you have anything to offer? Nope. So remember what I said? Wait till you grow up and have your own children.
Got him.
Now you see.
Yeah, I wish we had a feature on StreamYard to pull up emojis, because I'm thinking about that got him emoji, or a GIF,
Yeah.
I feel like some of the times they are dying on the inside.
Absolutely.
But they have a stoic look like,
See, I told you. Yeah. Gerald Best says stock market. Man, that's a big one too. That's a big one. And I think
the majority of ours have been finances.
Yeah. So we got this balance between finances and really communication things. Yeah. Which, okay, so in marriage, they tell you, Chris, and this is like my married folk in the comment section. Can you throw this in? Let me know. When we talk about premarital counseling and then being married for 13 years, finances is like top 2, man. Yeah, it's been 13 years, man. Yeah, wow. Listen, I figure they feel like we're just getting started too. Like seriously,
yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started. Yep.
I've known you longer than you've been married. That's crazy, bro.
These are facts. These are facts. But when in marriage, man, finances are like top 1, top 2 causes for argument. I don't know. Married people in the comments, let me know. And so there's an emotional response when you have money conversations, especially if you've grown up in a family and maybe you didn't have good money practices, you didn't understand consumer finance, or maybe you grew up in a family where your parents gave you everything, and then you get into a marriage and you don't have that freedom financially to do all of those things. Like
right.
So there's an emotional connection to conversations about money. Okay. So if we're having these conversations about money combined with I'm trying to see what a previous comment, combined with something emotional like what El Marie says, how to work through emotional pain.
Yes.
We haven't talked about money or finances.
Yeah. It's like if there's a meter and there's like 1 and this was like 10, it's now like 25.
Listen, Gerald says it was like the first.
Yo, so here's what I thought it was. I thought it was number 1 is communication, number 2 is finances. Yvonne actually says yes, communications is number 2, and it all goes together. Even Shannon also says as well, communication, finance, and the kids.
Yeah,
you also have kids too, man. So there's a whole. So for you, is it communication, finance, kids, or is it kids, communication, finance, or finance, kids, communication? Like what's your top 3? Maybe kids ain't it for you.
Have you it's like a what's the word? Triumvirate? Is that the word?
Yeah.
I think somebody Google it.
Either triumvirate or trifecta, triad.
It's like, bro, they in there like together. Yeah. It's like however you get the little spinning triangle. It's like they all trigger each other. So your kids trigger a conversation about how you're communicating with your family. And then emotions, right? Your emotions trigger, okay, how I'm going to respond to my kids and how I'm going to respond to our financial situation. Our communication is like, okay, how do we talk about finances? How do we talk about children? And not even necessarily children. You could take children out or insert any family thing.
Exciting incident. Yeah. Okay.
So children, extended family, where are we going to go for holidays? You know, why don't we talk? Do we want to have more? Do we want to have kids? All of that. Like it's a thing.
Yeah. I'm glad you did this, doing this motion. Shannon put this the crazy weave that goes with it. So, okay, man, yeah, wow. Thank you for this insight as a bachelor who, thinking about student loans and such. Yeah, I think
so
we take the next step.
Absolutely, man. So thanks for sharing that in the comments. So we got more to that. We're gonna pull in our conversation from last night. And I want to put up our official question of the day. This is our official question of the day. Okay. You saw a version of this on Instagram. Instagram _worship and the word, I think. Yeah, well, I'll put
get
that
it up together.
Later. I need to get it together. You saw it on Facebook and the Worship and Word and the Worship and Word on the Worship and Word Facebook page. I hope you're liking and following that page as well, sharing it with other people. Here's our official question of the day. How can we extend grace and mercy to our parents' generation? How can we extend grace and mercy to our parents' generation? I know I know y'all ready for this. Mercy. I know some of y'all ain't ready for this, but I know you're ready for this conversation today. So, So Chris, man, how do we get here? How do we get here relative to what we were talking about last night?
Well, we were too hard on David. Well, maybe not too hard. We were one-sided until like the very, very end, and we started talking about dualities and how, especially as a Christian, we wrestle with we just, there are multiple facets of our lives that we wrestle with. And we talked about how spirit versus flesh, as soon as you become sold out for Christ, there's this war. There's this onset that just happens for the rest of your life. And it's literally like, it's so rough. We kind of ended a little bit by trying to empathize with David, but we didn't lead the conversation through that. So that's how we're here right now. I think we should break down the difference between mercy and grace. I like the simple definition that I found that I was taught when I was 2 years younger. It wasn't even a long time ago. Mercy is.
I thought you were about to say fourth grade.
Yeah, nah. It's fresh. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve, and grace is getting what you don't deserve.
Man.
Say that again. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. So the context for most merciful actions is something you have done that was negative. You deserve the punitive action. There's a negative consequence, which you do deserve it, but you don't get it. Right. Yeah. So not getting what you do deserve. Grace has nothing to do with what you did or didn't do. It's just gift giving. If that's your love language, then grace that's it right there. Sometimes we like to conflate the two, but mercy is separate from grace. So mercy is getting what you ain't even have anything to do with. Even if the rain falls on the just and the unjust. That's grace. It's grace. Right. So that's the two. So now we're asking the question, how do we extend the getting what they don't deserve and the not getting what they do deserve? Because I mean, let's be real. Our parents haven't been perfect. None of them are.
Yeah.
There's some things that we would think they deserve. That's kind of rough to say too. Even as that's coming out of my mouth, I'm like, y'all give me life. Quite frankly. It's kind of enough, right? So it's like, that's enough, think of the movie Fences, it's like,
right.
I gotta love you.
Yo, I brought you into this world.
That's it. I feed you. You got a home to sleep in. So anyway, long story short, how do we now take those two things? Because I mean, they weren't all perfect. And yet at the same time, there are things that we should love on them for, regardless of the fact that they are our parents. So that's what you're asking. That's heavy, man.
I want to wrestle with what Gerald said first, because he said any mercy extended to my parents now would only be for my own benefit, since they ain't here. And I think this works, Gerald, especially in the context of what we're talking about with David and Solomon. We're really looking retroactively. So if you're in a space where you've lost your parents and it's not an opportunity to maybe have a conversation about some of these
Yeah.
things. How can now you put the memories and experience in the context of grace and mercy? And I know
Mm,
that's heavy for a lot of us, because some
that
of us
is.
in our family have, man, we've been through the ringer with
Yeah.
our family. We have been
Before you go
through,
to another one, because now we're really getting some comments in here. I'm
yeah.
loving this. Um, I would suggest, Gerald, that because you no longer have the opportunity to extend mercy, it maybe is no longer considered mercy, but forgiveness.
Hmm.
Because forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person as much as it has to do with you,
Hmm.
right? That's why
Hmm.
God says, forgive others, and then you will be forgiven. Right. So there's
Yeah.
this sense where only the only way that forgiveness works for the other person is through God.
Yeah.
Outside of that, any other action of forgiveness is really for ourselves to release the offenses that people have done to us so that we can then be released from the offenses we've done to God. So I think it's Luke 6:37 talks about that, and obviously the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6 as
Hmm.
well, talks about
As
that as well.
we,
So yes, so forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, and that's key. It's not saying forgive us our debts as we forgive the debts of others. We can't forgive other people's sins, but we can forgive other people. And I think that
yeah.
that's important. So now when you're looking at this context, I think you hit it on the money, Gerald. It is about you, but I would reframe it from being about mercy to now forgiveness.
Yeah. So it's tough, because it was a comment that we were wrestling with last night,
Hmm.
that we didn't get a chance to address, but I,
Okay.
took some notes about it. And someone
Okay.
said, "What do you do if if forgiveness is not accepted?" And I think this goes along to what you were saying
Yeah.
before. We extend this forgiveness, and a lot of
Hmm.
times we're looking for the reciprocity. Like, I forgave you for whatever. I need you to forgive me.
Right. Or,
When
or I need you to feel grateful. If you forgive someone and they don't react or respond, and they might have even forgotten in the way that you think, it's I'm careful to say that you haven't really forgotten them. We're human, right? But
Yeah,
I
we
will
are
say that
human.
your intention for forgiving is slightly warped. Because you're thinking that releasing, you're not, once again, you're not releasing them from their sin. You're
Hmm.
releasing them from your hurt and pain, the way
Yeah.
that you feel against what they did. That's what you're releasing them from. Now it's then up to them on what to do with the forgiveness. So I think of people like George Zimmerman. I think of people like OJ Simpson. I think of people who have been exonerated, who have been acquitted, who have been forgiven by the justice system.
By
Well,
the
we talking about
system.
mercy without justice, right?
Yeah.
And they keep finding themselves in the same situation. It's because, stick with me here, P. It's
Yeah.
because they have not accepted their forgiveness. They have not accepted their second chance. So we have this idea, or at least I believe, that those of us who have not forgiven ourselves, we self sabotage until we're in the same exact situation again and again and again until we get what we think we should have gotten to begin with, even if it's subconscious. I
and, and
truly
I
believe that.
and I think that's what makes it hard. I think we, in terms of what's somebody get help us out. What's a
Mm.
modern equivalent of cart before the horse? Like, I'm tired of saying to put the cart before the horse. It's 2020.
Yeah.
There are no horses and
Some,
carts. I
some
mean,
idioms just make so much more sense though, because I think of the cart before the horse. I'm like, yeah, that's just gonna be a disaster.
it's gonna be a problem, right? I think for
Yeah.
us, the cart before the horse is,
Putting the U-Haul before the vehicle.
oh,
Sip
okay.
my
Sip some tea on that, because
I gotta do what they gotta do with the pinky.
you got to do this. I think
Right.
for us, we wrestle
Mm,
with, for whatever reason,
mhm.
and our therapists, our mental health professionals can give us some context on this.
Yep.
I think we wrestle with trying to get, like, through to our parents or
Mm,
that generation or people before us first.
mhm.
And
Mm.
Shannon says, you're trying to walk before you crawl.
Before you crawl.
Yeah, we try to get that first,
Mm,
without wrestling with how we are with accepting the forgiveness that's available from God.
Mm.
So it's like, man, we're trying to, through this situation, like if I
Yeah.
could just get them to see where they were wrong and get them to
Yeah.
understand and get them to change and get them to ask for forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
then I can make some changes. But you
Mm.
have to ask yourself the question, like we were talking about with the system,
Yeah.
have you accepted the opportunity that you have from God to be forgiven?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that forgiveness from God is what actually guides
Mm.
your ability to wrestle with grace and mercy for other people. I think a lot of us, man, walk around not feeling like, because
Yeah.
it's a tussle. And
Yeah.
I remember
It
preaching
is.
somewhere one time, and we read the text, and I said,
Mm.
"Who here struggles with believing that they have an opportunity to be forgiven by God?" And hands
Listen,
went up.
you got me working on my Bible now. Come on,
Yeah,
P. Come on.
yeah. You work through it, man. So, and Mika says, in relationship to the question, how do we extend grace and mercy to our parents'
Mm-hmm.
generation? She said a couple of minutes ago, I'm actually struggling with this right now. And yeah, Mika, you're not the only one. You're
Yeah.
not the only
Yeah.
one. The people who are watching now, the people who are watching the replay of this,
So
yeah,
so P. So I mentioned Luke 6:37, right?
yep,
I think it's also the reverse. I think that God has created, especially after the fall of man, I think he's created nature to point us, Romans 8, point us to what's happening spiritually. We won't be able to have, for a lot of us, unless we have been grown into it.
hmm
Like for instance, there are a lot of preachers who are preachers because they've been cut from the cloth, just as from a lineage of
yeah,
preachers, right?
yeah,
Where we don't have, some of us, or maybe many of us, don't have those experiences. The exercising the spiritual disciplines of prayer, meditation,
yeah,
fasting,
yeah,
worship, singing. So when I look at Luke 6:37, and he says, "Judge not." This is Jesus now. "Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." I think Jesus, God, uses it in the reverse. I
hmm
think he says, if you can do this socially, if you can
hmm
do this amongst yourselves, then you will also be opened to the reality that this is what also happens spiritually. Just as I'm telling you not to judge, you take the initiative on not condemning, you taking the initiative on forgiving, I
yeah,
will also take the initiative on forgiving you. But for me to do that, conditional promise. These are conditional promises here.
hmm
If you forgive,
yeah.
you will be forgiven. If you don't judge, then I won't judge you. So I think that God has to do it this way because we can't see through spiritual eyes naturally, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We
yeah,
see through a glass darkly. Like it's
yeah.
oh man. Listen. I want to
El
scroll back and see.
Elmer, yeah, go ahead because I was gonna say El Marie, but I think we might have more
Yeah.
from before
So
that.
so Pam said earlier, and this is after we got off on a little tangent and chatting with Gerald.
Mm,
Um, Pam says our parents, a couple of things. They did what they knew to do. They
mm-hmm,
worked with what they had. We
mm-hmm,
didn't come with a book. Yeah, babies aren't
mm,
born with books.
yeah,
Now
yeah,
as a parent with grown children. Now I know as a parent with grown children, it's not
yeah.
easy.
Mm, mm,
And how do we reconcile this statement? Because that's what we say sort of in retrospect, our parents, or we even say it about ourselves. At the time I was doing the best with what I had. There was no instruction manual, or the people who came before me, we talked about transitions and setting things up, didn't
mhm.
really. I'm just listen. You gave me a box of Legos and there's no instruction book,
Yeah.
and you expected me to put something together.
Ooh, yo, segue to Ezra 3 after you talk about that because I
Yeah,
think that's a great segue when you're talking about Ezra chapter 3 and how the generations
yeah, yeah.
because they had a manual. Yeah, and
They
listen,
had a manual. They
they
had a
had a
manual.
they had a very detailed set of instructions for how to build a temple.
Yeah.
Now the interesting thing is, did the younger generation have the same thing? That's interesting. I don't know if you would. Yeah, I'm gonna
We're
leave
gonna
that
get
up
to
to you
that. We're
'cause
gonna get to that in a few minutes. So
okay.
Shannon says, by being compassionate to their needs and realize that as
Mm,
they get older, it's hard, but that's when communication comes into play. I'm dealing
uh-huh.
with a parent who has dementia and Alzheimer's. So, and that's one of the things that we pray about on Friday evenings. I invite you to join us on Fridays if this is the first time hanging out with us on Worship and Word. On Sabbath afternoons, it's a sort of a deeper dive discussion. We take what we shared on Friday and we try to make it hyper practical for you. So Friday evening is our deep dive biblical discussion. I mean, we were just reading text upon text last night, and Sabbath afternoon is expounding and trying to make things super practical. And as a part of our Friday afternoon, we have a session of prayer and praying for Shannon's family wrestling with dementia and Alzheimer's is something that's come up in our prayers on Friday.
Yeah. Yep.
El Marie says we need to accept that they are human as well, and although in our minds they may have been larger than life. Okay.
This is real. This is real. This is real. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this as you cogitate on that, P. We need to accept that they are human as well, and although in our minds they have been larger than life, as we grow, we start to understand the struggles they faced. We need to learn to forgive them for the hurt and pain caused and realize that we do the best we can given the circumstances. Extend to them what we want for ourselves while doing what we need to stop repeating the negative patterns in our lives. Thank you all for coming to this afternoon's Worship and Word. We are done. That thought has completed the entire, like, wow. Marie, that's wisdom. That's wisdom there. It is wisdom for, wow, that's wisdom.
I want to hear from my parents out there in the comment section. Do you remember the time when you were no longer a definitive superhero for your kids? And I know many of us, you know, many of us, our children still look at us with that regard and esteem, but there was some precipitating incident where it clicked and you saw it in the eyes or in the mind of your children that, wait, my parents are not superheroes. They're like humans.
Hey, so while people are thinking about that, hey, and I want to hear yours because I don't know if you're there yet, P. I don't know. Because man, that's. I think of Jesus when he was lost. He was lost for one day, but it took them 3 days to find him. Hello, it's a whole nother message in itself. They actually then do find him, and then he says, "But y'all ain't know where I was supposed to be this whole time. Like I'm about my Father's business." But Joseph, your daddy's in front of you. No, my real daddy. Like, listen, can you imagine? But for him, and for a few reasons, but it clicked for Jesus at the age of 12.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's who I am. And if I'm this, then my real lineage, the connection is upward.
Yeah.
Not earthly. I can only imagine what he was doing for those 3 days when they were looking for him in the revelation that he was in now, just sitting in and asking questions in the synagogue. So I'm just saying this so that y'all can get y'all thoughts together because I don't have the Facebook side. So like Pierre said, I can only see the comments. I don't see how many people are on. I don't see all of that. So I'm looking for the threads to just go boop, 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 boop. But because you know what? It is, first of all, that's going to be a hard thing to say. I already see you trying to formulate how you're going to say what you're going to say. Yeah, so you got to be next. You got to set the platform for our folks.
Okay. So this is good, man. Y'all giving us great stuff in this conversation. We're 40 minutes in. I appreciate everyone's engagement. Want to invite you to hit the share button as we dive deeper into this conversation and invite people to hang out with us, especially if you're in the space where you say, man, I was just talking to so-and-so about that last week. Yeah, that's the person you need to share this with. So can you imagine being 1 Chronicles chapter 3, right? Can you imagine being David's sons that were born to him in, was it Hebron, however you pronounce it? First Chronicles 3, right? And watching your pops, right, mighty warrior, watching him slay Philistines, watching him kill it on the harp, watching him walk into town and everybody be so enamored and celebrating him. Like you're watching and you're like, man, my dad's legitimately a hero.
Yeah.
Now can you imagine as the word spreads
Mm.
that he had Uriah killed.
Mm.
Like,
Oof. Scandal.
that was a superhero. And I don't know the connotation of superheroes back in the Old Testament framework, but there were hero mythological journeys and narratives, and I'm sure they wrestle with the ancient Near Eastern version of what we look at as in terms of like comics and Greek culture. It wasn't the influence in the Old Testament, but they had their equivalent of this kind of pantheon of gods and heroes. So David, I mean, man, he is checking off all the boxes. Like, he's legendary because he has killed a lion and he has killed a bear and he has legitimately killed a giant. Say what you want to. My dad killed a giant. What your dad do? My dad killed a lion. What your dad do? My dad is the captain. What your dad do? So can you imagine now getting older? Man, your dad's a murderer, bro. Can you imagine that picture? And for a lot of us, it's not that, because I remember for me, it was, I had an argument with my wife and my kids were they were close enough, right? And I remember the look on my oldest daughter's face after that. Like, it was like that picture was just, it was gone.
Yeah.
Like, Daddy was like this amazing person who never did anything wrong. He could do everything well. And at that moment, it was like,
and I think I'm not a parent, but forgive me for I don't want to be too crude here, but
man, be crude. The community in the comments will get you straight if it's off. You know how they do us.
I think for parents, y'all make it more hard than it actually is. So you look at that look and that and like that is translated into you just another. I can't finish it.
You try to feel it. So you from your position, you think parents superimpose?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the look of enlightenment can be misconstrued as a look of shame or disappointment.
Ooh,
like,
Chris,
you just another dude out here. Dude ain't the word I want to use, but you just another one. And it could very well be a narrative that we superimpose on, So, or if you're older, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I want to stick with that in terms of the grace and mercy conversation. What if sometimes, a great majority of the time, a parent begins to act a certain way because they are interpreting enlightenment by their child as a threat to their perception of how their child views them. And now they're trying to act in a way, like, I'm trying to get closer to camera on purpose. They're acting in a way to emotionally, psychologically get that child back into the place of pre-enlightenment.
So what they start doing is becoming more authoritative and being do as I say, not as I do. And they're like, no, I'm too old for this now. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna do the opposite to prove how much you can't do what you say you don't.
Because I recognize you, like, you're not Superman. You regular like all of us.
Yeah.
And I know as a parent that is hard.
Wow.
That is hard. Yeah. When you recognize that your children are beginning to perceive.
Yeah.
And the emotional impact. Come on, y'all. We gotta extend some grace and mercy to our parents' generation.
So Lashana Marie Barker says, "Come on now, Pastor." So now what I'm gonna do is make the transition here.
Hold on, let me plug my computer before it dies.
Yeah, go ahead. So Lashana is like, "Come on now, Pastor." So now I'm thinking, P, has that ever happened to you where the enamored glow of being pastor after the installment, and you're now 6 months in, after the first big trial happens at the church, whatever it is, you now are no longer seen as pastor?
No, that wasn't it for me. That was never it for me.
Okay.
I never had that thing.
Moving on.
I never had that thing.
Moving on.
It did happen to me though when I was teaching though. It happened to me when I was teaching.
Okay.
It happened to me when I was teaching. And
man. And the reason I say that is because there's some of us that probably aren't parents. So we can express, this in a different way for them to realize it can still happen to you. You don't have to be a daddy or a mother to experience the look of.
I mean, it happens, man. So
we need a GIF, man. You know the GIF.
We need to be putting those in. You know what? We can put them. We'll insert them as graphics, and then we'll just bring them up on the screen. Yeah, I think it happens to people.
Cool.
Not necessarily parents, but whatever responsibility that you wrestle with in your adult life. It'll happen on your job. You're project manager. You're executive. You're in charge of something, and people feel like you have it all together, but then they watch you mess something up. And at that moment, you regular, like you just like everybody else. And sometimes in response to that, you try to, again, I'm getting close to the camera on purpose. Like you try to move it back to a place where everybody considers you to be like that superhero. So I can only imagine now for much less a Solomon. Like, how does Solomon feel now that he's supposed to be on the throne and his father is dying? Like, context of 1 Kings 1, his father's dying. He's supposed to be on the throne. He hears within earshot Adonijah has assumed the throne. Like, what is, like, does Solomon get upset at his dad? Like, come on, dad, you should have handled this business by now. Or is he like, man, because at this point Solomon don't have the wisdom yet. Is he like, man,
how old is he at this point?
I don't know.
He has to be in his teens, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, on my Bible scholars in the comment section, let us know how old Solomon was when he was anointed to be king by Nathan the prophet and Zadok the high priest in 1 Kings chapter 1. If you can let us know, that would be really, really good. So
he had to be old enough to kill his brother. So
I mean,
but David killed lions when he was legit. So
yeah, he was legit teen, right?
Yeah.
So listen to what Pam said. Pam says, my kids love for me to sing the Lord's Prayer to them every night. And one day in their late teens, they was like, it's okay, mama, you don't have to sing anymore.
Woo, I remember the day.
What you mean we ain't gotta sing no more? Like, this is, okay. So my daughter said to me, my oldest daughter said to me a couple of weeks ago, she was like jumping all over me and stuff, right? Just jumping all over me. And I was like, oh, just get up off me. She was like, Daddy, you better take advantage of it.
Because there's gonna come a day. Wow. First of all, the fact that she said it in that way without kids are getting smarter. First of all, I think that's the first thing. But yeah, wow. So this happened to me with inanimate objects. Playing with my toys one day, and I think the last toy that I ever played with was probably a Spider-Man. And then one day I just, like, as I'm playing in the midst of this, my sister actually came in, so she right here. So it's actually the first time I have a live audience. It's kind of cool.
Nice.
But that's it. So it's interesting, right? Because I'm playing with this thing, and then I was like, my sister also said 15 years old, he became king. See, this is why we got live audiences now. This is why. Now I don't know if we're going to, because I'm just getting used to this right now. It's kind of cool. So playing with the Spider-Man, I think it was Spider-Man. And then all of a sudden I was like, this is dumb. It's like, I remember the day in my room. I was like, yeah. And I didn't even say it out loud. I was like, yeah, no, this is it. This is not it. My imagination has now shifted into, I packed everything. I had this blue box. You remember the blue box? No, I remember I had a blue box, put everything in there under the bed. That was it. So I can only imagine how maybe, kids, like you're a parent, my sister's a parent, like you have this moment where it's just like, yeah. Because I don't remember that with my parents. I can't remember that moment, but I remember when I was playing with my toys and I was like, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
And
Um,
so
it's
can you
not-
imagine now the context of having that
mm,
experience and
mhm,
then it being a negative reaction from your parents,
mhm,
and then
mhm,
the tension of that negative
mm.
response and that tense relationship,
Yeah,
but then now you have kids.
it's a lot. It's tension. Okay,
Listen,
let's
that's
pull up.
why we say we need grace and mercy for our parents'
Yes,
generation,
I
y'all.
was gonna say let's pull up that question again for those who are just coming in so that they can start chiming in. How can we extend grace and mercy to our parents' generation? Now, the reason why we're talking about this, guys, is because we kind of semi-railed on David last night about how he was repeating a vicious cycle of placating his son Adonijah, who was following the same footsteps as Absalom, and David still didn't administer justice to Adonijah like he didn't do it to Absalom, and the whole thing ended up in death
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Again.
Solomon killed Adonijah. David, and now mind you, let's give David some credit here. He's old.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about he needed human body comfort, warmth. That's still arguable.
First Kings chapter 1.
One, right. So yeah, so this is where we're at now, where we're trying to reconcile and maybe try to provoke even ourselves in this conversation to be more empathetic to how our parents have trained, instructed, loved, communicated, provided, protected, or the lack or insufficiency thereof. Because David's story is not one-sided. You know, I would consider him a true anti-hero. He's definitely a mixture, a complex character where it's not just, well, David, you should have da 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 da. Well, there are a lot of other things that, you know, we have not factored in. And we can't. We weren't there.
And I think
all
this
we can really go on is based on scripture, but
that goes along with the conversation about our parents too.
Right. There's some, man, listen, there's some stuff that we will probably never know. As a matter of fact, I think that our generation's parents are better at, I don't want to say keeping secrets, but keeping private things private. I remember, and we spill it all. I remember I was walking down the street. This is when I was living in Brooklyn, and this guy was walking his daughter to school, and he said, "Listen, I'm just having a really hard time today." And he was just going in about how his day was going, and just walking with it as if, you know, she was his confidant. I was like, that's what we do now. Okay, I know, you know, Brooklyn is gentrified now, but this is a whole nother level of connection that and I was like, this is a real thing. I was like, okay. I think our generation does that.
Yeah.
We try to share to our own kids. I don't have kids, right? But share what we might be going through, hoping that they would empathize with us when they probably still see us as a Superman. You know what, Pierre? Let's do this.
Their brain doesn't even.
I think we may push them closer at an earlier age to see us less than the because of all of the stuff that we probably should. I think there's spectrums. On one side of the spectrum, I think those of us might have seen our parents as more of the superhero longer because they were better at keeping things compartmentalized and quiet and private. And I'm not saying all bad things, it was private and quiet, you know, but and we
actually,
and we probably the parents now have a shorter lifespan, life term, experience time, whatever the terminology is, you know. So instead of it being at the age of 12 or the age of 15, some of us maybe at the age of 18, probably, or 17. Okay, let me put it this way, Pierre. What age did you realize I don't have to go to children's choir rehearsal or youth choir rehearsal anymore? I'm good. And you still don't even have a car.
Wait, hold on. Wait, say that again.
When you were at church and you got to this point, well, this is in my
Bro,
culture.
I ain't never get to that point.
Never.
Because when it was, I went to boarding school at 16, right?
So you had right.
Until I went to boarding school, bro, you go to choir rehearsal on Friday.
So now think about the kids now, they got options. There's some kids, they not even 8. Talk about that's not for me. So I think that our generation has probably I don't want to say have done a disservice, because our parents' generation probably has done a disservice too. But I think there's a spectrum of where we might have given too much or revealed too much of our inner lives or struggles or internal stuff that we're dealing with, that has now caused our children to see us not as the superhero until like the age of 12. But now it's like, you're 10 or, you know, I don't know. I'm just trying to make up a number, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's a balance
Thinking out
there.
loud here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it comes to a place where there's a difference
Mm.
between like emotionally vomiting on people and having a conversation, like a healthy dialogue and conversation.
I
I
think I'm
think
emotional
for so
vomiting.
many of us, especially in the social media space, it is
Mhm.
very easy to
Mm.
emotionally vomit in 240, 50 characters or less, or a sub post about somebody else. It's very
Hey,
easy for us to do that,
yeah, I think that's why I
feel
got off Facebook.
cathartic, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. I actually got off Facebook before I was going to be an emotional regurgitator.
sometimes you
Just
need to
stay
go
there.
dark. Sometimes you need to go dark for
And
a
I think our
month.
parents have done that. I think they have mastered that very well.
Yeah.
One thing that I do remember, my sister can attest to this, is when our parents maybe did have something that they need to deal with, they would quietly go into the room.
Yeah.
Remember those days? Close the door. It wasn't even like a tum, 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 slam. No, it was just a close the door. No, but even at that age, we knew,
Yeah.
but we didn't think it was something bad or wrong. We just knew, oh, there's something that they need to talk about. There's something that they
It
need
wasn't
to
always
discuss.
bad or wrong, sir.
Don't put that image in my mind.
Parents know.
Because a lot of
Listen.
times it's in the afternoon. Delight. Okay, so we're gonna move on. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right about that. You're right about that. So I think that's probably one of the things that that we have done as our generation is, I think we might have put too much on our kids. I've exposed them to too much, which might have at some point or another, eventually they are going to have this conversation where they need to give us grace and mercy, not for what we didn't tell them, but for what we did expose them to.
Isn't it crazy how when you're the person and then you're in the middle of the conversation, it seems like you're so knowledgeable and so perceptive. And I think that goes back to Delia's response earlier in our conversation, where she was like, yeah, my parents said, just wait till you get older have children.
Yeah.
So we're, wrestling, man, our parents didn't do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, or they did too much of X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Sometimes forgetting the fact that in just a few years, your children are going to be sitting maybe in a college campus, or maybe at a potluck after church, or maybe even at a lunch break, and talking about their parents. You were overbearing, you were protective, you weren't expressive enough, you didn't teach them about finance, you didn't teach them how to navigate the digital space, you did it's like, and that's why we need to have conversations that help us to reflect, because we realize, for as much as we are sometimes railing against the previous generation, like we were talking about with David last night, the generation that comes after us, they're going to be railing against us, and we're going to need that perspective of grace and mercy.
So we got our first live text message. This is cool.
Okay.
What does forgiveness look like then? There are like 5 question marks after that. Before we answer that question, we kind of did a little bit, but not really. Yeah. Do you hear any background noise, by the way? I hear like a hiss.
No?
Maybe that's me. Okay. If anything goes wrong, just know that I think it was on my end.
Listen, we good, man. Listen,
okay, cool.
It's fine.
Shannon says, were they really keeping quiet, or did we have a rule that said that kids stay in a child's place? We might have to scroll up to put that one on the screen. Were we really keeping quiet, or did we have a rule that kids stay in a child's place? I'm going to do this. So I'm going to pull out.
I can't keep up. It's getting warm now.
It is. So I remember reading in.
Very good point.
I think it's Adventist Home. I think it is, where I think somebody find it if you can find it. My sister's on it already. Just go ahead and hire her as the curator,
producer.
Yes. So where Ellen White talks about when it's time to have these meals, don't shoo the kids away. Keep them in. Like, there's this idea that and it's cultural. Grown folk business. Y'all leave the table.
It's a grown folk business.
And I believe that she was the one that mentioned, include them into not necessarily the conversation, but Bring them in, stop separating them out. So I think that there's part of this culture that we've had even from back then where it was not the practice of including people. When I say people, kids, into the dinner table, or when you're having these older adult discussions, or, go out and play, go play with your toys while we, and so I don't know if that really ties into it, but Pierre, maybe you can to speak to another perspective. I was just trying to bring in what a lot of us might have been familiar with.
I don't know if it's because I thought I was funny as a kid or something, but I was the kid in the family who got away with being at the table.
Okay.
And that allowed me to navigate conversations with people who were older than me at a much younger age.
Yeah.
It allowed me to perceive some things. It allowed me to recognize some things. But that was because I was close enough to, I would be there as my dad has the newspaper open and he's arguing some political point, and my mom is across arguing a different point, and my aunt is over here in the corner, and my grandmother is just praying for everybody at the table because we were all crazy. But I remember being close enough to those discussions, and even some of the financial discussions about things that were happening in the family, that really gave me a different perspective that all kids didn't have. Now you got to be careful, because some of those conversations we're not in a place to help navigate a conversation without being a challenge to the young people at the table.
Yeah. And I think that I've had that same experience.
Chris, you froze on me.
Can you hear me though?
I can hear you great.
Okay, yeah, I froze on me too because I don't think I can actually move anything. I can't see comments or anything.
Okay, so I'll put the this is the question we're wrestling with.
Yeah,
how can we extend grace and mercy to our parents' generation? Man, we've been an hour into this conversation. We're going to take some comments from people who's sharing. We're going to try to fix the tech thing real quick, but we'll take some comments from the people in the comment section. I don't even know how am I supposed to say that, Chris?
I don't know. It's the comment thread, maybe?
Yeah. So here's what we do, Chris. I'm going to hop out. Well, hop back in. And while you're hopping out and hopping back in, I'm going to take some of these questions. All right.
Okay, cool. Let me refresh.
Or comments.
Yes, the comments. All right.
Yep.
Cool.
So relative to what we've been sharing, I know it's a lot. El Marie says there's some stuff we should not know as children. Yeah, absolutely. There's some stuff we should not know as children. Sharing everything can be detrimental as well. It can cause anxiety. It can cause depression and other mental health issues if developmentally children are not ready to handle the issues. We need to be careful to share age appropriately. And even then, there is no need for everything to be shared, only what would benefit the children as they grow and develop. Yeah, I'd love to hear everyone else's perspective on this. I thank you for sharing that, El Marie. That's the tension that some of us feel like, well, they're gonna learn it anyway, so they might as well learn it all now. And then you have the other side of not giving a child any insight into what's going on. So there's some stuff we should not know as children. I'm going to scroll back and get a couple of more comments. You guys have been so great at sharing. Aaron said earlier, we were talking about, we were wrestling with, showing grace and mercy and the time in our children's lives where we recognize that to us, we were no longer a superhero to them. And Aaron says, yes, when my health was failing and I was unable to provide for them, it was painful on so many levels. It's hard for me to imagine anything worse than the physical pain I endured at the time. But I think what was going on mentally and emotionally was worse. Yeah, man. So some of us can resonate with that. Some of us don't know what that experience is like. To be in a place where you're taking care of your family, where you're supporting them, and then something happens. You have this health challenge or some accident or some unforeseen circumstance, and you can't provide in that way, and your family's looking at you like, what is going on? And you see that piece of enlightenment that Chris and I were talking about earlier, where you no longer retain that superhero position in their life. So Chris, thanks for coming back,
I
man.
had to shut the whole joint down, man.
Yeah,
Whole
there's space.
browser.
There's space.
My sister said it's chapter 71, page 443.
Okay. Okay. And so
Or
yeah,
440, paragraph 3. I stand corrected. So
I think there's some interesting perspective on that,
mhm,
especially if you have young kids. If you're a
yeah.
young family in the comment section hanging out with us, we love to hear what are some things that you're wrestling with now
Mm,
on sharing with your kids, sharing with your family. Is it how you guys spend money in the family? Is it
mhm,
some challenge that you're having? Is it how close you allow them to be to the political conversations that you're having?
mm.
How do you make that decision with your young family, what you invite them to participate in and whatnot?
I might have missed it, P. But what is maybe some of the things? Because there's something that we have done to compensate for what we
Yeah,
didn't have, right? And
yeah,
we talked about that one side of the spectrum where we'd probably do too much, right?
yeah.
What have you done
Okay,
as we're getting more
man.
to
So one of the things that I did.
without vilifying your parents? Because
Oh
that's
man.
another thing too that we want to
So
do. But
yeah, because listen, here's the thing about storytelling and communication.
Mm.
And Chris and I, we both have the same degree
Mhm.
in a master's in communication. We know when you're telling stories, and y'all subconsciously we do this.
Mhm.
When we tell the story, even in our past, especially about our past, we often tell the story to paint ourselves in the best possible light.
Yeah. Unless you're a self-deprecating self-sabotager like me. But the majority of you aren't. So yes, that's exactly what you do.
It's like, man, we say this, I did this,
Mhm.
but
Try to clean it up a little bit.
yeah, no. So no, this is not. This is. I'll give it contextually to just for our nuclear household. We were having a conversation about money, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter was asking me for something, and she's like, "Why can't we just buy that?"
Mm. Mm.
This was
Mm.
some months ago when I was still working full time as a pastor.
Mhm.
So why can't we just buy that? I said,
Mm.
all right, cool. All right, cool. Next time I get paid, we go have a little. I'm gonna give you the money.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the debit card. All right, you handle it. So it was payday.
Mm.
Put out my debit card. I said, hey, I got paid. This is how much money I got in the bank. She's like, oh, okay. I said, all right. So since you're in charge, I need you to write a list. This is what we got to pay for first. She said, okay. I said, yeah. We got to pay rent, $23.50. She said, what? I said, yeah, $23.50.
Yeah.
She said, no, I don't want to play no more. She literally said, I don't want to play anymore.
Right.
I said, why don't you want to play anymore? She was like, nah, because this is too much, Dad. I didn't know. I said, oh, okay. And ever since that, we didn't go down.
You didn't even get to
list.
the. She already knew. Yeah, you got some smart kids, by the way, man. Like,
we ain't
so,
go down the full list. But once I said rent $23.50 and she did the subtraction, she was like, oh no, Dad,
this ain't gonna work.
So every time I say, nah, that's not really something that we can afford it, but it's not in our best interest to make that purchase. So we have money here.
Right.
But using money here to buy this $20 or $40 item,
that's good.
Over the long term, it's going to cause a problem. So what you want to do?
Mm.
Or you can buy this $20 item today, but 2 weeks later.
I hope y'all listening, man. I hope y'all are listening to this gold right here. That Pierre didn't even open up a financial piece. They got these different programs and things that you can use for. He just said, cool, sit down and let's talk. Like, yo, first of all, congratulations. I don't even know if that's the word I should be using. Kudos to you and how you are able to instruct without actually, making it feel like it's a classroom lesson. I believe the word is object lessons. 90%, oh man,
90% of the time I make it like a classroom lesson and it backfires. That was the one time it worked.
now question.
Mm-hmm.
Has any of this developed from the parental relationship between you and your parents? Have they done anything perhaps in the past that might have been similar?
So
that's fine, but I just have a feeling.
My parents did not tell me how much money they made.
Okay.
They told me they said,
yeah,
sit down.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna write down all the bills.
Yes.
So they didn't tell me how much money they made,
Okay.
but they said write down the bills.
See, I just want y'all to know that this isn't just coming from out of nowhere. You know, even with the degree that Pierre has, like his parents did it, but like we were talking about this level of disclosure, it's a little bit different for our generation. Like we're comfortable saying, this is what we got. Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So, man, that's good. That's good. So, let's see here. Let's pull up Debbie, I think.
Which one?
You're right, because I'm looking
at killing in the comments.
Oh man, you know what? Let's do It's Amazing. I think that might be something that might pull us in another direction here. So Debbie says it's amazing to watch the transition even in family worship. The children went from accepting and listening to what we shared to asking questions and causing us to talk through some of our fundamental beliefs. The perspective allowed us to view things through a different lens. Mm-hmm. This stuff doesn't come out of a vacuum, man. They're soaking in, and you know, eventually, whether now or when they become parents, you know, like our parents would say, you'll learn soon enough.
You'll learn.
You know, they'll apply it. So, okay, cool. Pamela, she's laughing. She said, "That's what I did when we talk about the bills, but you will not know how much I make." So yeah, man. This is good wisdom. All right, P. So talk about how much time do we have left? First of all, I don't even know. I can't remember our
until people start logging off.
Well, let's do that then. You mentioned just before we got on, you were
like
talking
10 minutes. We got 10 minutes left.
Okay, so maybe let's talk about Ezra 3. And kind of reconcile maybe some of the things. I think we've already have some of these pieces already of how to start administering grace and mercy to our forefathers, whether that's our parents, grandparents, guardians, you know, for those of us that might have had them instead. Talk to us about Ezra chapter 3, man, because when you brought that up, I love the perspective that you used.
Yes, man. So if you read Ezra 3, use the index in front of your Bible to find it, or if you got the Bible app, you can just click on it. Right? It's a short book. It's easy to miss. It's easy to pass over.
Bro, I'm thumbing through it right now. Like,
right? You'll just. I mean, if you after Second Chronicles, you good. All right. So it's the story of Ezra 3. This is one of those coming out of captivity experiences for the children of Israel. And it's this idea, if you go to Ezra chapter 1, God speaks to Cyrus, king of Persia, and was like, yo, Cyrus, I'm putting you in a position to put my people back where they belong. And you are actually going to help finance their trip back to their home and rebuilding of their community so they can reestablish worship. So that's Ezra 1. So, you know, God talks to Cyrus. Now, we ain't got time to talk about how God is having conversations more than just the people like you. Like, we're going to save that for a different Friday night discussion.
That's different, yeah.
But Cyrus gives the permission, gives the finance, gives the thing, opens up the treasury, and gives them back the stuff that belonged in the temple of God. It sends them back, and they go back to rebuild. It takes them a couple of years. But Ezra 3 says, when they finally laid the foundation, right? So this is especially in context to what we saw in Chronicles and in Kings with Solomon. So get that picture of the temple in your mind. Captivity happens. That joker is burned to the ground. Like there's nothing left of that. They're out of captivity, out of the second captivity, and they don't have nearly as much as what they used to have. They don't have as much money. They don't have as much people. They don't have as much materials. They don't have anything close to what they used to have. And now they build a foundation for this new temple that size and scope is pretty much miniature compared to the temple that was built previously. So it says in Ezra chapter 3, verse 10, it says, when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests stood in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise the Lord according to the ordinance of King David of Israel. So they got the prescription on how worship is supposed to happen according to what David wrote several generations ago. Verse 11, and they sang responsively, praising and giving thanks to the Lord. This is where it comes from. We repeat it, but we don't always know that it comes from Ezra 3:11.
Gotcha.
For he is good, for his mercy endures forever toward Israel. Then all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because of the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. So the foundation, not the whole thing, not finished construction, just the foundation. And this is what we're talking about, grace and mercy to our forefathers. 12. But many of the priests and Levites and head of the fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Yet many shouted aloud for joy, so that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people.
Wow.
For the people shouted with a shout, and the sound was heard afar off.
Wow.
So it says, many of the priests, Levites, heads of fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, literally cried. And they're crying because of the dichotomy. We saw the Solomon joint.
Back in my day.
We had worship for like 2 weeks, and it was great. And we had so many singers and the lights. The temple was set up, even back to the tabernacle in the wilderness, set up to be a audio visual experience, like full sensory. In the temple, there's something that covers all of your senses. And then
the spot there, the fact that God is
there's something to see, there's something to smell,
multi-modality God,
something to hear,
audio, audible,
all of that,
the rest of it, the whole thing.
So that experience, you move it forward. So remember, we've been talking about this for several weeks. God has dwelt in a tent, right? Remember when we read in David, and remember when we read in Samuel and Kings and Chronicles, David says, God is dwelling in a tent. I dwell in an established house. I will build a temple, a place for God. Nah, you're not the one. Solomon builds it. And what Solomon builds is magnificent. So it makes what happened in the wilderness pale in comparison. Fast forward, that temple is burned down. The stuff is taken. They rebuild pretty much a miniature model of what they have. And the older generation said, we literally had it better. It was so much better. When I see what you have now, I am crying. Here's the challenge with that also. For the young men, for the young generation, this is the only temple they've seen.
It's the only reference.
They don't have context. They don't have framework. The only thing that they have are the stories from the past. So for them, this is their first opportunity to worship in freedom. So they're super excited. For the older generation, this reminds them of all the things that they did not do right because it was due to their disobedience that the temple was burned and their nation was destroyed. So you have two groups here. You have one group who's seen the amazing things that have happened in the past and are frustrated with the present. And you've seen a group that all they have is the present and they're looking forward to the future. And these two groups have to coexist in the same place and worship the same God.
Okay. This is a lot. So the dynamic it's not just the fact that the temple is a little bit subpar, not a little bit, a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a subpar to the original. Like, oh man, this is not even close. But it's also tied to the reason why it's subpar to begin with. So they're not lamenting over the structure itself, but over their disobedience that led to such a structure. I think that this is, and so let's talk about, man, this is a good segue here. Let's talk about how do we mend the weeping and the joy. Because my issue is when I think of God was very intentional, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Having stories and narratives so that people would always remember what he did. And I think about how the older people didn't have there were no, and I don't know if they had this back then, but I'm pretty sure they were smart enough to have these blueprints. There's nothing that they could hand down to the younger generation, to the point where and maybe it all got burned up. That could be it too, right? For them to extend these stories, extend these blueprints, the plans, the how-tos, all of this, including their mess ups. Mm-hmm. So that when the younger generation comes and rebuilds, it's not this dissonance between what once was and what is, but there's a story that connects to why it is now based on what has happened, but we as a younger generation know. So maybe we won't be as happy, but we still would be humbled to know it's a beginning.
So when you look at the context, and this is why it's so important, and ties in very well to what we've been talking about before, it's oral tradition. In oral tradition, if you don't tell the story, the knowledge literally dies.
Yeah.
And what we're dealing with right now is what were the mental, the psychological, the emotional, spiritual, the social context of what allowed our parents to tell certain stories, or what dissuaded them from telling the story, and then our implications on our lives as we have our families, wrestling with now, what are we going to decide to talk to our children about based on our emotional, social, spiritual, psychological context too.
Wow. How wow. So how do we reconcile this? Maybe this is not the discussion for steps. First of all, I'm not a parent, but parents. So I'm just as relevant in this conversation of those who are. What are some of the steps that we could do to start bridging this gap? Because I love Ezra 3. I don't think I've read it before like this. I don't even read it before in this context. There's weeping on one side, joy on the other, but there is a narrative that if it was shared and exchanged between the two of them, they would understand why. I mean, maybe they didn't know. Maybe the older ones didn't even explain why they're even crying. And maybe they're upset, like, well, how are y'all so happy? Y'all happy for this?
This ain't nothing.
This ain't nothing compared. So how do we take these? Well, back in my day, because that's technically a narrative.
This is good.
But it's more of a condemnation. Well, back when I was, this is how we did things. It's a story, but it's more of a
almost an indictment.
Yeah. So how do we change those into a back in my day to, well, back in my day? I don't even know how to change it. To talk about how we bridge that, because I think that one of the ways that we need to show grace and mercy is we would need to know what we're showing grace and mercy for. I can't show grace and mercy to my parents if I don't know some of the context of their struggles or what they've been dealing with.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me. Yes, this is true. I can forgive, but I can't. Remember, we talked about mercy. Mercy is not giving what you do deserve. Well, what do they do to deserve anything for them not to get it? That's a mercy. I would need to know something about what's been going on. Now, you may say, Chris, duh. I mean, the hardship of just being a parent should be enough. That could be enough for some people. For others, there might be a little bit more. There's, some more dynamics that we need to kind of work through. And also the grace, right? Giving what you don't deserve.
Man.
Yeah, P, I don't know.
As we're closing this conversation, we just want to encourage you just to, respond to that. Respond to what Chris offered. Each and every one of us is literally sitting at a crossroads. We have parents. And we either have children or the reality that there is a generation coming behind us. So even if you don't have children, the generation coming behind you will look at your generation and pull things apart and poke holes in everything, much of like we're dealing with right now. And what allows us to have the conversation in retrospect as it relates to David and Solomon is that we were looking at the context for David. What was going on in the life and experience of David. So as we're closing this conversation, We just want to invite you to join us on Friday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and Saturday afternoons, Sabbath afternoons at 4 p.m. But we want to hear from you as we're closing. I'm going to scroll back and get some more comments as well. How do we reconcile this?
I'm gonna pull up
How do we
Debbie's.
reconcile all of the things that are going on?
Hey Debbie, you're the fan, the Facebook fan. You know how they got like the little fire icon, like next to
Yeah.
the fans. Debbie, you got the fire icon today. You are lit today. So she says, without oral traditions, the stories die. So the traditions, I love Jonas Sachs. He talks about brand storytelling. You know, a few people that do that. Jim Signorelli is another one. We are no longer, so we had the oral tradition and then we had the publishing, right? Written word.
Yep.
And then it's now back to the oral tradition, but we call it the digitoral tradition.
Yeah.
So this is where Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, like all of these, Snapchat,
YouTube.
TikTok, YouTube, these are where the stories now reside. And so I think that one of the ways that we can create a space, I mean, even your SMS messages from your phone, you know, I think that there's a way to still create these repositories of narratives, without feeling like you need to have a bonfire in your backyard, or, you know, turn the stove on really hot for those of y'all that might live in apartments, because, you know, y'all can't create no fires, and say, all right, come around, children, let's have story time. You know, actually, Pierre, I tried to do that when I first came back home. I was like, yo, tell me a story. I actually asked my parents, different cases, tell me something. And do you know, it was very difficult for them to be put on the spot like that. And I should have been more forgiving then, because I'm like, yo, how y'all expect me to? I want to be the person that can talk about the sayings that my dad had or that my mom had, or these stories, because I have a terrible memory. But I want to be that guy where, you know, your lineage is on. He's like, well, you know, back in the day, my father used to walk 15 miles to. I want those stories. But you know what I realized? You can't get those stories by just putting them on the spot. I had to be attentive. First of all, I had to be present. So I had to be around them, and I had to be attentive, because usually those stories would just come up naturally. And most times, as you've already said, I love these discussions that we've had, especially around the holiday season, when you're around your family and they don't rush you off to go somewhere. You can sit around the table or the living room and kind of listen in on these older discussions. That's when they would really shine with their stories. Oh, they would love telling each other their old school stories. And that's where you just sit down and you start listening. And you know, that's where they open up. They're not going to really, that generation at least is not going to open up to their kids as we might open up to our, you know, kids today. Back then was around each other. Like, oh man, you remember that one time? Oh, what happened that one time? Like you have to, in a sense, not put them on the spot, but be in their space, almost like a fly on the wall, you know? I mean, I can't tell a kid now to be on a fly on the wall. That's just not, tell my nephew that ain't gonna work. But the point is, they are doing it. We just have to be more present.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the holidays present, and I know we have health challenges and distancing that we're all wrestling with in different parts of the country and the world. But part of it, extending grace and mercy, is when we do have holiday gatherings. Maybe it's not something that you record. I know we want to record everything with video. Maybe sometimes it's just grabbing a pencil and a piece of paper and jotting down some notes as you hear these stories. And, you know, asking your family members, hey, let's bring out the old picture albums. You know, they want to those ones. And just, you know, tell the stories and listen to the stories. And the stories always give context. And so, because you'll always have a person who is around that says, I've never heard this story before. And that could be a piece of the insight that we were missing. Siobhan says, we are very transparent with some issues. We as parents, as homes, we have to make our individual choices on what's best to share, that level of transparency and discussion, and not just a dump, you know, like unload. How do you facilitate a conversation? It's so much on the interwebs now. It's so much on Al Gore's internet, on different ways that you can have these conversations and put them in a way. And you'd be surprised, and I know Siobhan knows this, she works in family life. Man, children are listening. They're perceptive. They're listening. And Shane said earlier, he was saying one of the challenges is the comparison that happens. So
Mhm.
even when we don't expose our kids to things, they pick it up from their social connections. And as parents, we get compared
Mm.
to other parents.
Wow. 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 And I wonder if that comparison starts happening more when they don't see you as the superhero anymore. It'd be interesting to see, like, well, my dad, well, you just kind of go back to how awesome your parents are and what they do. Another thing, Pierre, because you were talking about, being, we were talking about being present in those conversations and listening and, just jotting them down as they happen, trying not to force story time to happen.
Yeah.
I also want to say that there is somebody in your family. I can't remember what movie I got this from, but there's always somebody in the family who is the glue.
Yeah.
I'm not the glue in my family. My sister is the glue. Like, that's the person who will bring people together, even if it's because of a group chat, something, right? Who is just always kind of making sure everybody's on the same page. Now, if you don't have the glue, it's just a natural thing. It's just natural. It just comes natural. If you don't have that, then I'm not going to say, well, I challenge you to be the glue for your family. That's a tall order for a lot of us. That's a lot. But just be more aware that there is or should be someone who, and sometimes it's not just one person, but who is more intentional on having the family nights, or having hey, why don't we all just, go here for vacation? Or there's usually someone, and that's the person that you also want to be able to do one of two things. I'm just speaking off the top of my head here because I didn't even know that there's only two. Maybe there's five. One or two things. Make sure that they know those stories.
Yeah.
They're, in a sense, your historian, right?
Oh, yeah. That's good, Chris.
But the other one is to actually listen to them. Them as the glue probably has deeper connections or more connections with not just your immediate, but probably extensive family than you do. So even just connecting with them, you were able to understand and learn some of the stuff that you would have never heard before. And I'm coming to find out that usually it's the people, I don't know if you resonate with this, the people that, especially in the beginning, I got to say this carefully. Sister ain't here right now. That's like I could say a little something.
Oh, she's gonna come back and watch.
You gonna come back and watch.
So I ain't gonna get me in trouble.
The people that back in the day who probably have had the most trouble are also the ones that are the most closest to in the family. The ones that had the most drama sometimes are also the ones that are also the closest. And I think of the prodigal son. The older brother was like, well, why I ain't getting all of that? And the father was like, well, you can if you want to. It just so happens that because of the circumstance, there's occasion to celebrate. So that's another thing to remember.
We're gonna do the prodigal son chapter on we're gonna deep dive and study, and then do a Sabbath afternoon conversation about that, even as it relates to intimacy in the family. And man, listen, we're trying to end. We're not trying to start.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
So Aaron says, I don't think you need to know everything your parents experience in order to show them mercy. The knowledge of their experience is helpful for you to reconcile the differences, but you can truly give mercy without knowing. Just understanding that they are human and have been faced with a lot is enough. That detailed information is for us. It helps us forgive. Man, that's a great context, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Because for a lot of us, even if we knew the deep insight, it wouldn't change anything.
You still would have to. You still have a choice.
Yeah. So,
and quite frankly, I love the fact that she ties mercy to forgiveness because it's on you.
Yeah. So you don't have to know everything about a person.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens to us. We say, well, if I had known that, I would have been nicer or been more supportive or whatever.
Yeah. But would you really have? Yeah.
Well, let's normalize. Let's normalize showing mercy to people, regardless of if we know the intimate details of their story or not. Because I mean, that's Lamentations 3.
Yeah.
Every morning. Mercies are new every morning. Lamentations 3. So, yeah.
Man, can we just go a little bit deeper on that one, Pete?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. The mercy piece, remember, it's not getting what you do deserve. So perhaps what they would deserve is healthy distance. to the point where they do feel a void so that you can protect yourself. Or you're just hurting. It's like, you know what? I'm taking a hiatus. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do deserve. If we're talking about mercy, mercy would then mean that you lean in closer and become vulnerable yet again with the potential of being hurt. Have mercy.
Yeah.
Like that. That's if we're gonna use that framework, like that's what it would mean. You know,
we need to have we need to grab all of our like therapists in our community and just have a Sabbath afternoon conversation about family dynamics. And bring on some of the people in our community who study this and hang out here every single day. Yeah. So, man, bring your Kleenex for when we have that conversation. So this is what Shane says. You want to take this one?
Shane says, my mom has Alzheimer's, and now I wish I had recordings of some of the stories she told. It's a challenge for me to be more transparent with my children. Wow. Yeah. You know, there's something that I wanted to do, you know, and it's not too late, but we're reaching a cusp in our own church where all of our older ones, our founders, the pioneers, are getting sick. They're sick and shut in, or they're passing away.
Yeah.
You know, when I first came back home, you know, I had this idea of, you know what, I want to record, I want to document their stories, man. Let's go ahead, you know, record these joys. The same thing that Shay was talking about. Yeah. And now I wish I would have been more proactive in doing that, because a lot of them now have either dementia or Alzheimer's. They can't remember. And so it's kind of like, man, you know, so Shane, I resonate with you. Obviously, you know, it's definitely on a different level. You know, it's your mother, you know, versus, you know, church fam that I've grown up with, but still, I resonate with that.
I want to challenge. I mean, we could do this because, you know, people are watching live or whatever, but we're also a worship community that's sharing with each other. I want to ask Shannon to connect with Shane. Because Shannon, I know Shannon's good for it too, to connect with Shane. Her father's dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, and Shane's mom is dealing with it. So man, ask you guys to connect and just kind of talk through. I mean, because that's something I got zero insight or even perspective on, but I know that, you know, two of you who are sharing in that experience may be able to support each other in that regard. So, man,
that's a good connection.
I also want to challenge. So we are doing a lot of just in churches that are you know, our older generations are craving attention and being around people. I want to challenge you in your church, whatever faith community you're a part of. You know, some people who watch this are Adventists like us, some are not. Doesn't really matter. Whatever faith community you're a part of, I want to challenge y'all to record. If there is someone who can get to an elder's house, our seniors, our elders, if there is somebody that can get to their house with a computer or a phone, hook that thing up, man, hop on a Zoom call, hit that record button, and just let them ask one or two. All you got to do is ask one or two questions. They're going to go.
That's all you
need. They're going
to
tell you the story. Document. Ask them to make it a family project. However it is to record, because there's so much goodness and insight and perspective. Not necessarily for knowing their story so we can extend the mercy. We were challenged with that by Aaron, but it's this old adage that whenever an old person passes, a library burns.
Wow.
And how can we capture so much that they want to share? Yeah. They want to share to us. They wanted to share it at church. We weren't listening. This presents us an opportunity to share. If you know a videographer, listen, you allocate the resources. Okay. If you know a videographer, you can practice social distancing. Somebody in their family is good with tech. Record these stories. Do it for them. Do it for their family. Do it for the church, and then distribute and discuss where appropriate. Because I know there's going to be some editing and some things like that, but allowing people to share their stories will do so much for them and so much for you. So
that's a good idea, man.
Yeah.
And we need a good idea sound effect.
Man,
like a ding. It's so generic, but anyway.
It's cool. Delia says, sometimes I sit in regret of not listening to my parents enough when they were alive. Never knew I would miss it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other people in our community? You've lost your parents, no matter what age, no matter what the situation was, but you lost your parents, and sometimes you just kind of think, man, I really wish I could just go back and talk to them. It might not even be a loss in terms of they died. It could be a
Yeah.
loss as it relates to maybe being estranged, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you didn't never knew them, or maybe
Yeah.
they just didn't want to have anything to do with you, anything like that. Yeah, anybody else can resonate with that loss of parent connection, just having that conversation. I know Delia's not the only one. Man, Chris, man, it's so much more we could get to. We're creeping. We're over
Yeah.
an hour and a half in this conversation. It's been really rich. Um, man,
Shout out to the community, man. You guys have really added extra layers on top
yeah,
of our questions. You actually have created, not even created, but you've come up with answers, from your own experiences, which that's encouraging. Especially coming out of last night's
yeah,
last night's study. So this was a great way to round this thing out as we just reflect on how complex it was for David,
yeah,
and how
man.
it also is for our parents and our grandparents, and even for us,
For us,
those of us who are parents and who will have these kind of
hey,
discussions.
Chris, just wait
Yeah,
till you have kids.
I hate you.
Just wait till you have kids. You'll see. You talking all that talk. Wait till you have
Whatever.
kids.
Right now it's gonna be y'all. It ain't gonna be about me. It's y'all got to
Uh-huh.
deal with it. But
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. We
oh
we thank you
man,
so much for sharing
yeah,
with us, for hanging out with us, for wrestling with these stories. A lot of times when we read the Bible, we
mm,
read it from you don't come to the Bible without a bias, y'all. That's impossible. You
yeah,
read it through the lens of your experience, and sometimes it
mhm,
takes a moment to sit and wrestle with the perspective that other people might have had, realizing
yeah,
that sometimes you don't know what you're talking about. You're off, you're wrong, you need to be challenged. You need to
yeah.
see things from a different perspective. So that's what we
And
aim
that's the
to
Holy Spirit.
accomplish. Yeah.
Holy Spirit
Yeah.
does that for us. As
Absolutely.
much as I want to sit down and just try to get it, man, you and you, P, you know this. After a while, you realize, how come I missed that?
Oh, come on,
Sometimes the Holy Spirit shields it because you're not ready for
you're
it.
not ready for that.
Sometimes it's not even just you haven't experienced it. He's just like, nah, not yet. So
Yeah.
praise God that He illuminates us. You want to pull
Absolutely.
up Debbie's
Yep.
comment?
No, I want to do Delia's first.
Okay.
Because man, I've had the opportunity to be around some of the work that she does, and this is so true. If you want stress relief
Mm.
without paying a lot of money, sit and chat with some 80 and 90-year-olds. They are so funny. These are facts.
Yes.
These are facts.
Listen, no holes barred.
Bruh, no filter. Like you go get it.
You gonna
You
get
go
it
get it.
raw.
And to watch
Yeah.
older generations tell their
Mhm.
stories, man,
Yeah. They are great storytellers.
great storytellers.
Yeah.
Hilariously funny. So seek for opportunities to do that, especially with the new tech and the new age. And listen, if you got older people in your congregation or even in your family, don't even if you don't go to church, like this
Yeah.
is church for you, in your family, find a way to record the stories, audio or
Mm.
visual,
Mhm.
or go through the old photo albums and take pictures of them looking at old pictures and telling the story. Whatever
Mm.
you do, be super creative with it, and
That's a good one.
and learn from that experience. So yeah,
Debbie says it's so refreshing to have this space available on a Friday evening and Sabbath afternoon just to flesh these ideas out. I'm looking at Bible stories and characters in new ways. Debbie, you and me,
yeah,
you, me, and Pierre, and all of us together, we are definitely learning as we're conversing. This isn't like we've come, prepackaged with,
Mm-mm.
these ideas. I mean, we have a loose framework of what we're going to talk about, but yeah, it unfolds as we are engaging with each other. So Debbie, I'm excited that this is happening for you, and most definitely for others that are rocking it out with us, because it's
Yeah.
happening for us too. It's not like we're the sages and the teachers and we're imparting wisdom. Nah,
Uh,
sometimes y'all, quite often, not even sometimes, y'all impart the wisdom, and I'm like, oh wow, okay,
Absolutely.
yep. And I gotta, yeah.
Man, just the man community of comments that we've had today from Debbie and Delia and Pam and Shannon and
Mm,
Debbie, Mika, Aaron, Shane, El Marie, Siobhan hanging out with us today. Did I miss anybody? Edward Smith was hanging out with us. The Shauna, man, trying to scroll through all the way back. Jennifer Abbott, Chloe, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Gerald Best. Yeah, thanks so much for just sharing, just hanging out with us,
Yeah.
and being a part of this experience and a part of what we do as a community. We're gonna invite you to continue to join. I go back and watch old stuff too, man. It's so much insight in recordings that you sometimes miss, and
Mm-hmm.
use these conversations as discussion prompts. And even if they're not discussion prompts, use them as journal prompts,
Hey.
prayer
Yeah.
journal prompts. When you're sitting down and reflecting, God, I don't know what to pray about. God, I don't know what to write
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
go think back to one of the conversations that we've had together and use that as a starting point. Because even though we love all of you and appreciate talking to you and engaging, what
Oh,
we do
that's smooth.
together, what we
That's
do
smooth.
together cannot replace the conversation that Jesus is calling you to
That's
have
right.
with him
That's right.
for yourself. So yeah, until next time. Chris, you got anything to say on the way out?
See y'all next week, 7:30.